The text from my brother came through while I was in a meeting with the Department of Defense procurement team. I glanced at my phone, saw Derek's name and almost ignored it. But something made me open the message. Sold your stupid stocks for quick cash. Those worthless papers were cluttering my office. Got $3,500 for them. You're welcome. I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Then I typed back, understood. Colonel Martinez was still speaking, something about delivery timelines for the advanced sensor arrays my company manufactured, but the words blurred into background noise. I excused myself politely, stepped into the hallway and called my attorney. James? It's Alex. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Derek just sold my restricted stock certificates. The ones I left at his house for safekeeping during my deployment. There was a long pause. The defense contractor stocks. The ones with the federal trading restrictions. Yes. The ones that are technically classified as protected government assets due to the technology classification? Those exact ones. Another pause, longer this time. Alex, your brother just committed federal securities theft. And if he sold them on the open market, he may have violated about 6 different national security regulations. That's what I thought. What do we do? First, don't do anything. Don't warn him, don't try to fix it. Let me contact the SEC and Treasury. They'll want to handle this through official channels. James hesitated. You know this is going to destroy him, right? Federal charges, potential prison time, massive fines. He called them worthless papers, James. He sold them for $3,500. Do you know what they're actually worth? Based on the last valuation I saw? North of $500,000. Plus the technology access they represent is classified at the highest levels. I could hear him typing. Give me 2 hours. Don't contact Derek. Don't tell anyone else. Just sit tight. I hung up and stood in the empty hallway, my mind racing through how it had gotten to this point. Derek was my older brother by 4 years. Growing up, he'd been the golden child. Athletic, popular, effortlessly successful at everything he tried. I'd been the quiet one, the studious one, the one who joined the army right after college because I wanted to serve and because I honestly wasn't sure what else to do. The army had been good to me. I'd gone into intelligence, specialized in emerging technologies, and eventually ended up working on classified programs that interfaced with defense contractors. When I'd left active duty 3 years ago, several companies had recruited me aggressively. I'd chosen Meridian Defense Systems, a mid-sized contractor specializing in advanced sensor technology. They'd given me stock as part of my compensation package. Significant stock. But because the company worked on classified programs, the stock came with restrictions, federal trading limitations, mandatory holding periods, and a classification as protected assets due to the technology access they represented. I'd explained all of this to Derek when I'd asked him to store the physical certificates during my final deployment. These aren't normal stocks, I'd told him. They're restricted, they're valuable, and they're legally protected. Keep them safe. He'd waved dismissively. Sure. I'll stick them in my office safe. No problem. That had been 18 months ago. I'd returned from deployment, gotten absorbed in work, and honestly forgotten about the certificates. The actual stock value was tracked electronically. The physical certificates were just backup documentation. I'd been meaning to retrieve them but hadn't gotten around to it. Apparently, Derek had gotten around to them first. My phone rang. James. That was fast, I said. This is bigger than I thought. The SEC is already aware of the transaction. Meridian Defense Systems has automated monitoring for any trading in their restricted shares. When Derek's buyer tried to register the transfer, it triggered multiple federal alerts. What happens now? There's a joint task force forming, PC, Treasury, FBI, and DoD. They're treating this as potential espionage until proven otherwise. Espionage? Derek's an idiot, not a spy. Unauthorized sale of classified technology-adjacent assets looks like espionage from a regulatory standpoint. They'll investigate, determine intent, and proceed accordingly. James paused. Alex, I need to ask. Did you authorize this sale in any way? Any conversation that he could claim was permission? No. The text I got was the first I heard of it. Good. Forward me that text chain right now. And Alex, prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. He wasn't wrong. The next morning I was back in my office when my assistant buzzed me. "Mr. Caldwell, there are federal agents here to see you. They say it's about a securities matter." I wasn't surprised. "Send them in." 3 people entered. 2 FBI agents and an SEC enforcement officer. They were polite, professional, and extremely thorough. They asked about my relationship with Derek, about the stock certificates, about whether I'd authorized any transactions. I answered honestly, showed them the text message, and provided documentation of the original restrictions on the shares. "Mr. Caldwell," the senior FBI agent said, "you understand that your brother sold restricted securities without authorization. Securities that are classified as protected government assets. Do you know what he did with the money?" "I have no idea." According to his bank records, he deposited the $3,500 and immediately spent most of it. New TV, some gambling, dinner at an expensive restaurant. The agent's expression was carefully neutral. "He seems to have believed the certificates were genuinely worthless. He didn't ask me. He didn't check. He just sold them." The SEC officer leaned forward. "Mr. Caldwell, we need to be clear about the scope here. These shares are currently valued at approximately $487,000. Your brother sold them for less than 1% of their actual worth. The buyer, who appears to be a legitimate but uninformed collector of old stock certificates, had no idea what he was purchasing. We've already frozen the transaction and seized the certificates. What happens to Derek? That depends on several factors. Intent, cooperation, whether there are any national security implications." She paused. "But minimally, he's looking at federal charges for unauthorized securities trading, theft of protected assets, and potentially violation of national security regulations." After they left, I sat at my desk for a long time. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Derek. I didn't return them. That evening my mother called. "Alex, what did you do to your brother?" "Hello, Mom." "The FBI came to his house. They took his computer, his files, everything. He says it's about some stocks you left with him. Why didn't you warn him they were important?" "I did warn him. I told him they were restricted, valuable, and legally protected. He chose to ignore that and sell them anyway. He needed the money. His business has been struggling and he thought they were just old papers. You can't let them prosecute him over a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. It's theft. He took something that didn't belong to him and sold it without permission. He's your brother. You could stop this if you wanted to." "No, actually I can't. This is a federal matter now. It's out of my hands." "You're going to let them put your own brother in prison?" "He put himself in prison the moment he decided my property was his to dispose of." Kept my voice level. "Mom, I told him those certificates were important. I specifically explained the restrictions. He chose not to listen. You always were selfish. Derek said you'd be like this." She hung up. I ordered dinner, tried to work, and failed to concentrate on anything productive. The next few weeks were a blur of interviews, depositions, and legal proceedings. The Joint Task Force investigation moved quickly. They determined that Derek had acted alone, that there was no espionage or foreign involvement, but that didn't reduce the severity of the charges. The media got hold of the story. Defense contractor employee's brother arrested for theft of classified adjacent assets. It made national news. My company's PR team went into overdrive, emphasizing my cooperation with authorities and the robust security measures that had detected the unauthorized transaction. Derek was formally charged with federal securities theft, unauthorized trading of restricted assets, and violation of Defense Department regulations regarding protected materials. His bail was set at $100,000, which my parents paid. I received increasingly hostile messages from family members. My aunt called me a traitor. My uncle said I should be ashamed. My cousin posted on social media about how I was destroying the family over some paperwork. Only my younger sister, Maya, reached out with any empathy. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Derek's telling everyone you set him up. That you deliberately left the stocks with him knowing he'd sell them so you could get him in trouble. That's ridiculous." "I know. I also know Derek's been jealous of you since you got that job at Meridian. He kept saying you were just a grunt who got lucky." She paused. "For what it's worth, I think he did this to himself. And I'm sorry the family is being awful to you." Thanks, Maya. Mom's organizing a family intervention. She wants you to drop the charges. I can't drop federal charges. That's not how this works. I tried to explain that. She doesn't want to hear it. The family intervention happened anyway. My parents' house, the entire extended family assembled in the living room. Derek sat in the center like a martyr, his expression a calculated mixture of wounded innocence and righteous indignation. I arrived late deliberately and stood near the door. My father started. Alex, thank you for coming. We're here because this family needs to heal. Derek made a mistake. Derek committed multiple federal crimes, I interrupted. A mistake, my father continued firmly, that can be forgiven if you're willing to be reasonable. You can talk to the prosecutors, explain that it was a misunderstanding, ask them to drop the charges. I've already explained this to Mom. I can't drop federal charges. The government is prosecuting based on the law, not my personal feelings. Derek spoke up, his voice dripping with false hurt. You could at least try. Tell them I didn't mean any harm. Tell them it was just old papers I didn't think mattered. You didn't think they mattered because you didn't bother to listen when I explained what they were. You never explained. You just handed me some old certificates and said to keep them safe. You didn't say they were worth $500,000. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. My own voice from 18 months ago. Derek, these stock certificates are restricted securities. They're worth a lot of money, but more importantly, they're classified as protected government assets because of the technology involved. You can't sell them, trade them, or do anything with them. I need you to keep them completely secure. Derek's voice responded, Yeah, I got it. They're important. I'll put them in my safe. I stopped the playback. I recorded that conversation because I was deploying to a sensitive location and wanted documentation of where I'd left important assets. You acknowledged that they were important. You agreed to keep them secure. You chose to ignore that 18 months later. The room was silent. My mother recovered first. You recorded your own brother? What kind of person does that? Someone who was about to spend 6 months in a combat zone and wanted to make sure his assets were properly documented. It's called being responsible. It's called being paranoid and untrusting. Given current circumstances, it was apparently justified. Derek's facade cracked slightly. This is typical Alex. Always so superior, always so by the book. You couldn't just let it go? You had to make it federal case. You made it a federal case when you sold protected government assets. I didn't have a choice. You had a choice. You could have handled this privately. Paid me back the $3,500. Taken your precious stocks and moved on. But no, you had to bring in the FBI, the SEC, the whole federal government. Do you know what this is doing to me? To my reputation? To my business? Do you know what you did? You stole $500,000 worth of legally protected assets. You sold technology-adjacent securities that are classified by the Department of Defense. You potentially exposed sensitive information to unauthorized parties. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You did all of that for $3,500, which you immediately spent on a TV and gambling. And you have the audacity to act like you're the victim here. I'm your brother. And that should have meant something to you before you stole from me. My father stepped between us. Boys, please. This isn't helping. There's nothing to help, Dad. Derek committed crimes. He's being prosecuted. The family can accept that or not, but it doesn't change the facts. My uncle, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. Alex, think about Derek's kids. Your nephews. Do you want them growing up with a father in prison? I want them growing up knowing that actions have consequences. That you can't steal from people and expect family loyalty to erase criminal behavior. So you're really going to let this happen, my mother said quietly. You're going to stand by while they send your brother to prison. I'm going to cooperate with federal authorities who are prosecuting someone for breaking federal law. The fact that he's my brother doesn't change that he committed the crimes. I headed for the door. I'm done with this conversation. Derek's voice followed me. You'll regret this. When I'm locked up and the family falls apart and everyone knows what you did, you'll regret it. I left without responding. The trial was set for 6 months later, but it never got that far. Derek's attorney, after reviewing the evidence, the recording, the text messages, the federal regulations, the documentation of the stock's value and restrictions, advised him to take a plea deal. Derek initially refused. He wanted to fight it, convinced that a jury would sympathize with him, that the prosecution would seem heavy-handed. His attorney was more realistic. Derek, you're on recording acknowledging that the stocks were important. You sent a text message admitting you sold them without permission. The stocks are documented as protected government assets. There's no defense here. If you go to trial, you'll lose and the sentence will be much harsher. The plea deal was relatively merciful. 5 years probation, $100,000 in fines, restitution of $487,000 to me, and permanent restriction from trading securities. No prison time if he complied with all terms. He took it. The day the plea was finalized, I received a call from the federal prosecutor. Mr. Caldwell, I wanted to thank you for your cooperation throughout this investigation. Your documentation and testimony were crucial. I just answered questions honestly. More than that, you could have made this difficult. Many people would have, especially given the family pressure you must have faced. She paused. I also wanted you to know that this case has prompted a review of security procedures for restricted securities across the defense industry. Your company's detection system worked, but several others have vulnerabilities. You may have prevented future incidents. I'm glad something positive came from this. One more thing. Your brother's restitution payments are structured over time. If he defaults, the court can impose additional penalties. I wanted to make sure you understood that you'll need to monitor compliance. I understand. After I hung up, I sat in my office looking at the framed photo on my desk. My Army unit taken in Afghanistan 3 years ago. We'd been supporting classified operations, working with technology that most people would never know existed. The work had mattered. The security had mattered. Derek had never understood that. He'd seen old papers, not protected assets. He'd seen his chance for quick cash, not federal crimes. He'd seen his little brother's property as his to dispose of, not as something that required respect and permission. That evening, Maya came to my apartment with takeout. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Honestly, I'm not sure. The family's still furious with you. Mom's barely speaking to anyone who doesn't agree that you're a monster. Derek's posting on social media about betrayal and persecution. I know. I've seen it. For what it's worth, I looked up those stocks. I wanted to understand what he actually did." She set down her fork. "Alex, he sold $500,000 worth of protected government assets for $3,500. And then he spent that money on a TV and a casino trip. He didn't even have a good reason. He wasn't desperate, he wasn't trying to save his house or pay medical bills. He just wanted quick cash for luxuries." "I know. And the family expects you to just forgive that? To ask federal prosecutors to ignore multiple felonies because family is family?" She shook her head. "That's not how the world works. Try telling Mom that." She doesn't want to hear it. None of them do. They want to believe Derek made an innocent mistake and you're overreacting. Maya looked at me seriously. But I read the recording's transcript. I saw the text messages. He knew those stocks were important. He just didn't care. That's the part that bothers me most. Not that he didn't understand the legal implications. I can almost forgive ignorance. But he didn't even ask. He just took my property and sold it because it was convenient for him. Because he's always seen you as less than him. The younger brother who got lucky. He didn't think your property deserved respect because he doesn't think you deserve respect. I hadn't articulated it quite that way, but she was right. Over the following months, Derek made his restitution payments, grudgingly according to the court reports. He complained on social media about the unjust system that was bankrupting him. He gave interviews to local news stations about how federal prosecution of family matters had gotten out of control. He never once apologized to me. The family remained divided. My parents slowly began speaking to me again, though our relationship was strained. Some cousins and aunts and uncles cut me off entirely. Others reached out privately to say they understood, even if they couldn't say so publicly. Maya remained my staunchest defender. When my mother tried to guilt-trip her into cutting me off, Maya responded, "Mom, Alex didn't commit federal crimes. Derek did. If you can't see that, that's your problem, not mine." Work provided a welcome distraction. The incident had actually raised my profile in the defense contracting community. Not for the family drama, but for the security awareness it had demonstrated. I was invited to speak at industry conferences about protecting classified adjacent assets. My company promoted me to Director of Security Compliance. The stocks themselves, recovered from the confused buyer who'd purchased them, were returned to me. I immediately transferred them to electronic registration and put the physical certificates in a bank safety deposit box. I didn't trust anyone with them again. 18 months after the plea deal, I received an unexpected call from Derek. "Alex, it's me. I know. I need to talk to you. In person. Can we meet?" "Why?" "Please. His coffee. 30 minutes. I'll come to you." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe near my office. Derek looked older than I remembered, worn down in a way that hadn't been visible before. He sat across from me, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and stared at the table for a long moment. "I owe you an apology," he finally said. "Okay. Not because my lawyer says I should or because it might help with the family. Because I actually genuinely screwed up." He looked up and his eyes were red. "I've spent the last 18 months paying back that money, dealing with probation, watching my business fall apart. And the whole time I kept telling myself I was the victim. That you overreacted, that the system was unjust, that it was all blown out of proportion. And now I've had time to actually think. To stop making excuses and look at what I really did." He pulled out his phone, showed me a screenshot of an article about restricted securities regulations. I educated myself, finally, about what those stocks actually were, what the restrictions meant, what the legal implications were. "And Alex, I'm horrified by what I did." I said nothing, just waited. "You told me they were protected assets. You recorded yourself telling me because you were deploying and needed documentation. And I just dismissed it. Didn't care. Saw some old papers in my office and decided they were worth more to me as cash than as your property." He shook his head. "That's theft. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. If I stole from you." "Yes. And not just theft. I sold government-protected securities without authorization. I potentially exposed classified technology information. I violated federal regulations that exist for actual national security reasons." His voice cracked. "I could have created a genuine security breach. All for $3,500 that I spent on stupid, meaningless crap. Yes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to be brothers again, not like we were. I needed you to know that I finally understand. What I did was inexcusable. The prosecution wasn't unjust. The consequences weren't disproportionate. I deserved everything that happened and probably more." I took a sip of my coffee, buying time to think. Why now? Why tell me this now? Because I'm tired of lying to myself. Because my kids asked me last week why Uncle Alex never comes around anymore, and I couldn't keep telling them you were the bad guy. Because I'm about to finish probation, and I wanted to do it having at least been honest about what I did wrong. He met my eyes. And because you deserved better than what I gave you. Better than a brother who stole from you and then blamed you for the consequences. We sat in silence for a while. The cafe buzzed around us, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I finally said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I appreciate the apology. The real one, not the performance you put on for the family. It won't fix anything. No. But it's something." I stood. "Derek, I hope you figure out how to be better. For your kids, if nothing else. But I need you to understand that we're not going to be close again. Too much trust was broken." "I know." He stood too. "For what it's worth, I am proud of what you've accomplished. The career, the work you do. I should have said that before I stole from you." "Yeah. You should have." I left him there and walked back to my office, feeling something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. But maybe the beginning of acceptance that what had happened couldn't be undone, only moved past. 3 years after the incident, I received a letter from Derek. He'd finished his probation, paid the last of his restitution, and rebuilt a smaller, more honest version of his business. The letter didn't ask for anything. It just updated me on his life and ended with, "I think about what I did every day. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to teach my kids to be better. Thank you for holding me accountable when no one else would." I filed the letter away and returned to work. The stocks Derek had tried to sell for $3,500 had grown in value. Meridian Defense Systems had won several major contracts, and my restricted shares were now worth over $800,000. I'd diversified my holdings, put most of the assets in electronic form, and never again left physical certificates anywhere but a secured bank vault. The family slowly healed in a fashion. My parents eventually acknowledged that Derek had been wrong, though they never quite forgave me for not handling it privately. Some extended family members reconnected. Others remained distant. Maya remained my closest family ally. She'd seen through Derek's manipulation from the start and had never wavered in her support. At a family gathering 5 years after the incident, Derek approached me cautiously. "Alex, thank you for coming. Maya invited me. I'm here for her." "I know. But still." He hesitated. "My oldest son is thinking about joining the military. He asked me about your service. I told him you were someone worth looking up to. I hope that's okay." I looked at my brother, genuinely looked at him, and saw someone who'd learned a hard lesson and was trying, however imperfectly, to be better. "It's okay," I said. "If he has questions about service, he can call me." "Thank you." We weren't close. We'd probably never be close again. But we'd reached a kind of peace, built on honesty about what had happened and acceptance of the consequences. The stocks that Derek had called worthless papers had taught multiple lessons. About security, about respect, about the consequences of theft, and about the complicated nature of family loyalty. They'd also taught me that sometimes the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is to refuse to protect them from the results of their own actions. Derek had committed federal crimes. He'd been prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced. The family had been furious with me for cooperating with authorities rather than circling the wagons. But I'd done the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the comfortable thing, but the right thing. And in the end, that was what mattered. The worthless papers had been worth $500,000 in stock value, hundreds of thousands more in lessons learned, and the knowledge that I'd stood by my principles even when family pressure demanded otherwise. That, it turned out, was worth more than any stock certificate.